So Jeremiah just talked about going for it and taking a chance. Now we're going to talk about somebody who embodies this philosophy. So picture this. You want to start a food truck to sell ice cream sandwiches, but as a new entrepreneur, you don't have the funds to do so. So you purchase an old mail truck that you retrofit, somehow manage to convince AAA that it actually ran recently, and then get them to tow it to Coachella. And then once there, you sell your butt off. If that's not the inception story for a total badass brand, I don't know what is. Joining us now is the mastermind of this plan, Natasha Case. Since starting ice cream company Coolhaus in 2009, Natasha has continued to build a brand that is nothing less than badass. In a time when consumers are bombarded by messages, Coolhaus has broken through the noise thanks to its strong brand persona. Today, Natasha is going to share how she built this unique company and how its brand attitude and voice has evolved over the years. Please welcome her to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Just a show of hands, who's partaken in Coolhaus ice cream? All right, some smart people in the audience. That's good to see. So I'm here to talk to you about building a brand. And something I want to say as an overarching principle of what I'm about to go through is that there's no prescription to doing that. There's no right way and wrong way. There's things that have worked for us, and I'm looking forward to sharing those with you, and hopefully those can be of value to you. Before I get into brand building, one thing I'd like to share is a video that we made to kick off summer. So let's go ahead and watch a little bit of that. Groundbreaking. Meticulously crafted. Assembled by an expert team of food architects, farchitects, if you will. Comprised of the finest non-artificial ingredients. Taste tested by the most discerning palates in the world. We've developed the most sophisticated, high-performance ice cream innovation. For what? Just to sit there looking pretty? No! We did it for you. You're the ingredient that makes Coolhaus come to life. I started Coolhaus because I wanted to make ice cream as real as you are. Ice cream as inventive as you are. Ice cream as iconic as you are. That's pretty iconic. Ice cream so good, it'll make you flip your shit. I've always believed John Mayer is right about only one thing. Your body is a wonderland. So treat it like one. Have fun with it. If you want to act like a kid, I say do your thing, you know? It's true, we're groundbreaking and meticulously crafted and all those big words I use at the beginning. We take ice cream very seriously. So you don't have to. Coolhaus, ice cream as awesome as you are. Look, there's me and Cindy. I love that. So this video definitely, we're very excited about it, and it shows a lot of aspect of our brand, but those are things that frankly took almost 9 years to really come to terms with. There's elements of it that were there in the beginning. There's a lot of kind of aspects of our brand identity that even though they're there, you don't see them for years and years, or you don't really have the right means to touch on them and kind of elaborate. So just want to say that, you know, that is a perfect example of what the process is, and I'll get into what some of those things are. Brands are elastic. So this is a really, I think, exciting one, because I think we kind of come into launching our brand with the mindset, it's got to be perfect. I hear a lot of people say, I have an idea, but it's not ready. I can't talk about it yet. It's never really ready and done or any of those things. It's always, always changing. So I feel like, at least for me, this is a big exhale, because it shows that you never have to get it perfectly and pinpoint it. You can always kind of keep growing and shape-shifting. And I think that's a really cool thing, and that's a really positive thing for you as you look to evolve what you're doing. An example that I want to show of this is our packaging. So first picture on the top is the original packaging we went to Whole Foods with. So just to back it up a little, the way that we got into Whole Foods was, because a lot of people ask, I literally just wandered into my local Whole Foods, Glendale, and into the freezer aisle, and I found the guy stocking the freezer. Jason, shout out to you, wherever you are out there in the world. And I said, how do we get on the shelf? And he said, let me connect you with the right person. There's someone who, at the time, it was a position called the regional forager. And you guys can have a conversation about that. So I presented to her, to Kimberly, my ideas of what I wanted to do to bring Coolhaus to the shelf. We were exclusively food trucks at that time. And a really important part of the branding and the design at that point was to really evoke the trucks. So I wanted to create a package that looked like our trucks. You can see the grill and headlights there, steering wheel. I wanted it to be in a cardboard box so that it could really protect the ice cream sandwich. And by the time I even had that idea set aside, it was basically too expensive to do much else, since we were such a small brand at the time. You can see that we actually use this box for all 5 of the SKUs that we launched with. Interestingly, I put the logo very small and on top where you can't see it at all on eye level. And my background's architecture, and I designed this myself, so there's really no excuse for any of this. What I really wanted to do was like a metallic ink on the gray part, but we couldn't afford that, so it's like a dull matted gray. And then, not pictured here, but the way we would distinguish flavor to flavor was a black and white sticker on the top of the box, because that's the only place we could really fit it. So you can imagine going into the freezer aisle, and what you're going to see at eye level is basically like a dull gray line. It was as though we were saying, please don't find us. Whole Foods' best kept secret. Amazingly enough, because we had a good following from the trucks and we had really built a lot of buzz, and I think had kind of that community, kind of strong community ties, we did sell well enough for Whole Foods to come back to us and say, so we think this is worth expanding, however, you got to do something about the packaging. And I'm so glad that we just kind of launched as a minimum viable product and just put something out there, because then after this 3-store test, we had something to really respond to and develop. And that's so key, because if we had just pitter-pattered for months and months, we could have lost that whole window to just get out there. So we took that, first idea, and we said, the box didn't really matter. It's not really, the ice cream sandwiches aren't falling apart. We can switch to a bag, which is much more cost efficient, and we can make it shiny and metallic like we wanted. This is a current iteration on the bottom, so there were still a lot of phases between that. One of which we thought it was so essential to make the color stripes on the bag always match what the ice cream and cookies look like in the ice cream sandwich. So basically, cookies and ice cream are always shades of beige. That ends up not being that exciting either. You don't need that. And again, we kind of had to put it out there and see, let's just go with like those bright, shiny object ideas and really have it pop on the shelf. Even when we switched from the box to the bag, we ended up growing about 1,000% in most of our Whole Foods stores at that time. So it's so important, get it out there, learn from what you're doing, and compile that information, and just continue to evolve. And we're continuing to do this all the time. Almost, a year doesn't go by that we don't change the packaging. So I hope that's actually a comfort to you, because you don't have to get it perfectly right. You can always keep moving. Brands are storytelling. I think today the story behind your brand is going to be more important than ever. So much of how people are connecting with brands is about transparency, about feeling like they're connected to you. It's a very personal thing. We're really voting with our dollar these days. And it's so, so essential to share with your consumer, with your following, who you are, what you like. I mean, I could go on, where you're from, if you're, who's in your family, what you like to do on the weekends. But what I want to say is, whatever that story is going to be, your founding story, your kind of community connection story, who your team is, it also doesn't have to stay the same. Very important to us when we launched was the fact that I was an architect by training. And that's because it was the recession when we started, and people were really drawn to the fact that you could have one set career path and totally pivot from that. So that was a really, really key part of our messaging. Our flavors are named after architects. Pictured there is the Frank Berry with a little model of the Disney Concert Hall. Minimalism, Mies Vanilla Row. So it was really baked in. And we actually never talked in the beginning about being women founders, specifically about being women-led. Just wasn't really part of our storytelling. And over time, we really started to realize, first of all, we're basically becoming the top women-owned, majority-owned, nationally distributed ice cream brand at grocery. So there's really something here, and we need to be more proud of this, and we need to share this. So we went through the women-owned certification process, which is now in all of our packaging, and we just started including it a lot more in our messaging and content. And we found that this resonates almost more than anything what we're doing, no matter how many attributes the brand has. This is our headquarters, that picture on the right, with our women-owned mural. We had originally planned to change that text every few months or so. Used to say cheat day, but the problem is once you put women-owned on your office, you can't really change it out because then it's like, oh, are they not women-owned anymore? So that's on there to stay. But this has become, I think, also in this moment that we're going through in a real shift in power dynamics, such an important part of our voice. And I look back, and it wasn't early on, but the architecture has still stayed there. You also don't have to abandon kind of that early messaging. If you look at our video, we use a lot of architectural icons in LA to just sort of show people that we're an LA brand and that we have this kind of interesting tie-in. And I think a lot of how our brand has developed has to do with what does it look like when an architect designs a food brand, and what kind of perspective does that bring? So identity, I just want to read this one. You know more than you realize you do early on because you are, excuse me, because you are trusting your gut when you launch. Find a way to circle back to that clarity. So this has been a really interesting, I think, kind of self-awareness thing for us at Coolhaus. When you first launch a brand, and how many out there are just kind of getting started with something? Anyone newly? I think in a way, your launch, it may be the biggest risk you ever take, no matter how many risks you take as you grow your brand. Because you literally are creating something from nothing. You're putting a ton on the line. You're potentially walking away from a much easier kind of set path. And you're kind of saying, there's this crazy idea I have, and I think people are going to like it. And it's really lightning in a bottle. I think after you get through that initial launch phase, it's very easy to say, we want to create something that as many people as possible will like. Or you might have influences such as, investors, other partners that want you to kind of shift, and that makes sense too. It's very easy to kind of start to dilute that initial risk-taking and that initial, I think, buzz that you have and that euphoria you have when you launch and you see this brand is resonating with people. And I'll even say for us, the first 7 pints that we brought to grocery, they were definitely on the more kind of reinvented classics side of flavor profiles, with the exception of probably balsamic fig and mascarpone, which was a little bit zanier. And they're all great sellers, and I'm glad we did it because elevating classics is a surefire bet. That's a great way to go about your product development. But what we start to realize is we're really known for a lot of those wacky flavors that we started with. And this one in the lower right, milkshake and fries. This was actually a flavor that we did as a PR stunt in our shops to kind of touch on the people who dip fries in their shake. I know you're all out there. It's okay. You can come forward. And we just thought, oh, this will be a cool thing. People will post about it. We could not keep this flavor in stock. And it is truly really delicious and fun. And after 2 years of literally selling out of it almost every season, we said, why are we not considering this for our grocery lineup? This flavor is us, it's wacky, it has a following. Let's do it. nothing like it out there. And this one is selling extremely well. It's our second fastest growing pint. And I'm so proud that, it's easy to keep diluting as you grow, but you really realize, actually, as you grow, you have the right to be weirder and, in a way, care less and just do your own thing. And so I really encourage you to kind of preserve that moment of launch and always keep a little bit of that spirit alive as much as possible. That being said, if I look at one of our top-selling new sandwich, it's definitely a classic profile. And so we're not abandoning, what we've learned, and we're definitely always kind of, I think, marrying those two things. But it's really cool to feel as accepted as possible for who you are in all things, including when you're growing your brand. Brands are social beings. Everyone knows social media now is a big part of your storytelling, your identity, your brand. What I find actually the most interesting with social media is not what you're posting about yourself, the content you're creating. That's really, really important. And you always have to keep refining that. I am, though, more intrigued by what are other people posting about us? What are they getting? And what are they really drawn to the most in kind of the retelling of our brand through their following? I mentioned women-owned has been a huge one. We get more traction about that. We get more people saying, I didn't know Coolhaus was women-owned, even if they've been buying us for 8 or 9 years. And we had our story on our packaging, and I'm the face of the brand. We had to be so clear, and we had to tell them. And we've really gotten a connection there. But one of my favorite things that we do is popping up in other people's social media accounts, because that really tells you what's going to be most kind of exportable about what you're doing. We've been doing these pop-ups in actually in other grocery retailers. And a lot of these grocery stores are quite new to social media. It's not really kind of inherent in their DNA. They're not really spunky accounts. So it's really fun to bring that Coolhaus pop of color and life and zaniness to their handles and just see, like, when we literally are going to bring the Coolhaus identity in a place that may literally not know us at all, and where we, in a way, only barely belong because we're just, 5, 10 SKUs on a shelf. How does that do? And we've actually found almost every time popping up in these retailers' accounts, it's some of the most traffic they see to their page in months. So it's really promising to know that this is a culture that it can live within our space, but it really has to live within other people's space for it to succeed. So I'd really encourage you to don't just focus on what you're doing and what you're posting, but really see kind of the global elements of what's getting out there. Brands are the unexpected. Even kind of backing up from this, which is pictured as some custom flavors that we created for basically our biggest activation to date. When we started with trucks, which we only really, that was really our whole business for the first 2 years, we had imagined the truck business as being going out, a few nights a week and selling, maybe going to some cool festivals. We didn't even really think about catering. The first call that we ever got to cater, and this shows you how long ago this was, when we came back from Coachella, the story that Carol described, we got a call from MySpace. Remember them? And they said, what's it going to cost for you guys to come do an ice cream social for 3 hours? We want to pay for you guys to give out ice cream. And we're like, oh, just hold one moment. What should it cost? We have no idea what should it cost. Anyone know? It was literally making it up on the spot because we had not planned for that. Catering is now 95% of the truck business. Within that, another thing that we literally, we did not kind of jot out in our pro formas or really have any idea about was corporate activations. So this is, a brand coming to us and saying they want to kind of make us part of their campaign. Coolhaus is a canvas for their brand. They may want to wrap our trucks. We create custom flavors. If anyone's had the sandwiches from the trucks and shops, they come in edible wrappers. We can brand those with edible ink. Whatever it may take to really be part of this campaign that they're looking to create, Coolhaus can really be a part of that, which is so cool and really not what I expected. So no matter how much you're going to plan out your business, the market will talk to you and it will tell you things that you can't plan for. And that's why it's so important sometimes to just launch, because you really need those pieces to come to you. So this case was, as I mentioned, one of our biggest activations, Delta American Express, and it was to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Delta Amex card. And they wanted to send trucks to 11, 12 different cities around the country. And anyone who had that card could come to the truck and get one of 2 sandwiches that were inspired by Delta snacks you could have on board. So on the right, you've got salted caramel, candied peanut, and pretzel. And on the left, we did like a strawberry cheesecake with the Biscoff cookies that you buy on board. Any fans of those? They're delicious. Particularly the strawberry cheesecake flavor, it was so popular and so uneven in how much people wanted it. Again, we said, why are we not thinking about taking this farther than a very kind of a big activation, but in a way, a very niche, limited time only custom product? And we ended up not doing it as a sandwich, but as a pint. And that is now, it's our biggest flavor in the Midwest. It's doing extremely well, and I never really thought to look, at these kind of custom menus that we create for partners like that and bring them all the way. So, once again, you can kind of go through your traditional R&D process and how you think you're doing things, but it's so important to keep your eyes as open as possible when you're developing your brand, your flavors, your identity, your storytelling, and you don't know where suddenly something's going to come to light. And if you're too kind of honed in on the process, you're going to ignore it. So that's, I think, in a way, one of the biggest lessons for us. So yeah, that's, as I said, these are all strategies that have been really instrumental for us in growing. I definitely don't see them as the only way to do things, but there are certainly things that have worked for us. I hope that they can work for you as you're growing your brand. So thanks for listening.
For many companies, it can be kind of scary to make a strong statement with your brand, especially when you're just starting out. And I think it almost is more scary now when we're in a country that's really like polarized into very different opinions. So why is it worth to take the risk? Why not just go like really broad, try to appeal to everyone?
I definitely don't think you can cast that wide of a net. There's just no way that you're not going to please everybody. You're going to have to face the fact that some people, may not be happy with the choice you make. But I really think going narrow and deeper as much as possible and really targeting less and just dominating that niche. I think there's just so much more you can do there, and it's so much more exciting because you can really speak to someone in an authentic voice. If you're going to try to speak to everyone, it's going to be inauthentic. It's not possible to really create a point of view. And I think with the brand, you have to have a point of view, and you have to take that risk because otherwise you're just going to sit in the middle of the pack, and it's going to get lost.
And we talked about the fact that you definitely have this more urban, contemporary feel. But you still play out in the Midwest, like you were saying, with the new flavor. So how does that translate over to all these different parts when you've got this persona that's very like urban and cool and fun?
This is something we've come back to more and more so in recent years. Oh, thank you. So just take this off.
You can just leave it, but turn it.
Is our LA identity. You see that in the video, and I think you kind of get a feel for that in some of those slides. But there's something about kind of belonging to a certain place, and I think we're in a way lucky that happens to be LA. We're really the only LA born and raised ice cream brand at grocery in that sense, because you can speak to that crowd, but it's also such an aspirational market. And you have people from all across the country who have eyes on us, especially now. I mean, who would have ever guessed that LA would become kind of a center for the food scene? So many new restaurateurs are coming there. So many brands are emanating from there. LA was traditionally the place where you didn't eat, And so I think you have to choose like what's really going to speak to that audience, and then what's going to be the most exciting people who aren't from there, who are looking to there and kind of looking to get in on that.
And when you were starting out, you talked about how the packaging has evolved, or your brand has evolved, shall we say. How do you create something at the start that still has the ability to flex and grow, like that doesn't pigeonhole you too specifically?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I'm most interested in with the brand. I would say, I would say that you want to create systems that can be more global, obviously, than like just a logo or just a color. I mean, you're gonna have to have subsets of everything that you're doing. But I think that as long as you have kind of those underarching pillars of things that you never can abandon. I mean, whether that's kind of a characteristic of what you're doing or something as literal as a font or a color, you can keep very abstract underlying things, but you can really spin off of those beyond those basics. You can end up departing quite far from where you started. I really, looking at that original logo, which was tiny on the top of that box, I mean, it was hard to separate from it because we really felt that that was us at the beginning, but you look at what we have now and it kind of looks nothing like that. And, that's okay. So I think as long as they can both speak to what you're trying to say to your audience, I would spend more time really kind of roughly identifying that than being locked in on like, fonts and sizes and materials and colors and things like that. Those are kind of more the superficial elements of a brand.
Well, this has been some great advice, but speaking of departing, I think we have to depart the stage for Jeff Kleinman. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.